As UN climate talks open in Belem in Brazil, under the weight of geopolitical rifts, tariffs, and fraying supply chains, Singapore's Environment Minister Grace Fu tells CNA's Rachel Teng that COP still matters. And she says Singapore aims to help keep the process on track, from carbon markets to climate finance.
From geopolitical tensions to rising trade barriers, this year's UN climate talks in Belem come at a time when the global process faces fresh headwinds. Singapore's Sustainability and the Environment Minister Grace Fu says COP still matters.
This is the only one where almost all countries around the world sign up to an agreement. There are a lot of headwinds. It's geopolitical contestation, but it's also about the lack of finance, for example, that's hampered some of development. And also geopolitical supply chain issues are now also getting into things like environmental goods. It's important for us to have Singapore's voices represented in the process. And if where possible, we will also want to help shape decisions so that Singapore's interests and the world's interests are taken care of.
Grace Fu says the latest US tariffs and supply chain strains are not going to help COP negotiations.
You need to have alternative leadership that's, providing that pathway. So I think all of us, not just Singapore, all of us like-minded countries who are still focused on climate action will do that at COP.
Experts say those tensions and tariffs are already weakening Asia's bargaining position, with businesses facing higher costs and softer demand.
Countries are coming into this COP with a very weakened bargaining position because the businesses on many fronts are facing the double pressure of increased costs and reduced revenue. So that will add a lot of pressures for countries to be even more calibrated for their commitments.
On Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, which governs international carbon markets, she says the rulebook is more or less done and points to Singapore's first government purchase of carbon credits.
We have seen 10 implementation agreements being signed and very concrete outcome from the first purchase from the government of carbon credits of 2 million tonnes. So we have laid down the standards and we work with the private sector to identify the projects. So I intend to spend more of my time this time round getting in more discussion with my counterparts and also looking at collaborative projects.
But she notes the market is still very nascent with too many overlapping rules.
It's only 1 year since we negotiated an outcome. So there's a proliferation of regulations and standards around. So what we are doing now is also to try to consolidate and harmonize so that the market can actually have fewer regulations and standards to deal with.
Analysts say the biggest challenge now is the integrity of those credits and the standards meant to police them.
Integrity meaning how do you know for sure that these are not credits that are actually produced by clearing forests. These are not credits that actually damage local communities, including indigenous people. So there are many standards for supply side integrity. So this is the one that's still being resolved.
Grace Fu says the world is watching Singapore from its implementation agreements to its carbon registry.
The way that we do our regulations, the way that we do our carbon registry, for example, we are basically doing a lot of the sort of heavy toiling work in the beginning so that the soil is loosened and other farmers can come in and plant easily.
Beyond carbon markets, she says Singapore can share practical solutions from the ASEAN Power Grid to carbon finance and exchange ideas at COP30 in Belem.
We have made progress towards the ASEAN Power Grid. We have worked towards carbon credits, finance. In Belem, we're looking forward to have deep discussions with our partners to bring some of these solutions to their countries, also for us to import and embrace some of the solutions that they have in their country into Singapore.
Grace Fu also frames climate adaptation as a business imperative.
If the water supply is not sustainable and I'm going to go into contestation for water with the local community, it's not going to be a very sustainable business. It's going to be a lot of risks getting local acceptance. Businesses are beginning to realize that. And so before they invest in a location, they have to ask this question: what are your national or local adaptation plan? And so for Singapore, we definitely want to be ready. Insurance premium, for example, has become extremely expensive. In some places has been unavailable, especially in places where there are frequent forest fires, for example. So increasingly, I think it's impacting businesses, it's impacting communities. So I think we need to get adaptation the sufficient and appropriate attention that it deserves.
She notes that insurance costs are soaring in disaster-prone regions, a reminder that adaptation deserves far more attention. And financing remains a sticking point, but Fu says Singapore wants to activate private finance beyond traditional grants.
We are coming in to activate private finance, to find new finance to activate that. So this COP, I think, is a very good COP for us to show actual implementation results. And with that, I think it will give confidence to the other developing countries as well.
And despite slow progress, she says there's real momentum if you take the long view.
The adoption of renewable energy, the plans to decarbonize, the adoption of EV, implementation of some of the infrastructure for EV charging, for renewable energy, we have made huge progress. In fact, I think there are more expansion in the power sector in renewable energy than in fossil. So I think this is a real step. If you take yourself back and look at progress in a longer period of time, 5-10 years, you will appreciate that as a humanity, as a global community, we have made significant movement.
For Singapore, she says, the task is now to stay in the room, implement what has been promised, and help shape a system where ambition and finance can keep up with the speed of the climate crisis.